Well, for more on how lifting the net neutrality laws could change the internet here and abroad, let's bring in Ryan Clough. Ryan is a general counsel at Public Knowledge, a non-profit that promotes freedom of expression, an open internet, and access to affordable communications tools. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for being here.
So let's start with some of the main repercussions. What is it that people should be aware of? Let's start with from the business perspective.
Sure. Well, I would say net neutrality is a concept that's been embedded in the internet from the beginning and really is the reason why the internet emerged in such a powerful force in both the economy and in society, because there's no gatekeeper that you need permission from historically in order to start a business on the internet, start a website or an online service. In terms of whether or not, this is for the first time in 20 years, the FCC is essentially saying we are not going to protect the basic principles of net neutrality. And what that means is it gives the ISPs more ability to manipulate internet traffic. And over the long term, you could see, therefore, more barriers, especially for innovators, small businesses, and anyone who's trying to start a new innovative service online.
Now, it's interesting because Netflix actually joined other tech companies saying that the net neutrality protections, they ushered in an unprecedented era of innovation, creativity, as well as civic engagement, all very important things. So how do you think the rollback is going to affect those issues?
Sure. I think that over the long term, what you'll see is if these rules, if the repeal of the rules sticks, which it's still unclear if they will, there's going to be a fight in the courts, there's going to be a fight in Congress. But if there isn't a legal framework to protect basic net neutrality principles, then over the medium to long term, I think you'll see less competition for all sorts of online services on the internet. You'll see less innovation. You'll also see harm to all kinds of non-commercial services that couldn't afford or don't have the incentive to pay for the types of tolls that the ISPs are going to impose on all kinds of different services as a result of the repeal.
So then what was the idea behind it then to repeal it? What was the aim then?
Sure. Well, the chairman of the commission and the large telecommunications companies argue that it hurts investment in networks and that it stops them from expanding broadband infrastructure. That's their basic argument. Certainly we at Public Knowledge and a whole host of critics disagree with that. At the end of the day, these are largely monopoly providers who, yes, they want to make more money by being able to impose all sorts of tolls and manipulate traffic in other ways. But there's very little evidence that even if they make more money from that manipulation, that it's going to go into improving the quality and quantity of internet service. Instead, they're largely quasi-monopolies, so it's just going to improve their profit margins.
Now, as you mentioned, there will be a long legal battle ahead, but for business leaders, especially in tech companies who are watching this unfold, what sort of conversations are they having right now?
I think it's important to make a distinction between the really big established tech companies and smaller companies who are either trying to get a market foothold or even startups that haven't even gotten off the ground yet. At the end of the day, the bigger tech companies are probably going to be okay from this decision. They may ultimately have to pay more to reach their customers. At the end of the day, the customers, that cost will be passed on to the customers, so the harm is really to the customers from the bottom line. But those big companies like Google, Amazon, Facebook, they can afford that, and they have the leverage to probably overcome whatever market barriers are put up by the ISPs. It's really their competitors and new entrants and future innovators who could be harmed, who could be discouraged or pushed out of the market entirely. And we've also seen, for example, venture capitalists talk about how these kind of market barriers could hurt investment. So you're really talking about a long-term loss to innovation and competition.
So with this legal battle ahead, as we know, several states and attorney generals do plan to take action, but how likely are they to succeed?
Well, we're one of the organizations in D.C. that we certainly intend to challenge the order and participate in those court battles. I'll just say this, broadly, there are significant legal problems in the FCC's order, including in their decision to reclassify broadband service out of Title II of the Communications Act, which is the regulatory framework that's the basis for net neutrality. And so we believe that the FCC has made serious factual and legal errors in their analysis, and that may ultimately lead the courts to reverse the opinion.
And what about the global implications? Obviously, this is a U.S. law, but what does that mean for everyone else?
Sure. Well, net neutrality is a fight and a principle that's actually been around for a decade plus now, including in the regulatory sphere. So many other countries have passed net neutrality laws or have established regulatory practices around this. So I actually don't think that the U.S. decision in and of itself will cause all kinds of other countries to abandon net neutrality if they were already pursuing it, because a lot of countries have already decided that it's the right way to go. For example, Canada earlier this year reinforced and reaffirmed its commitment to net neutrality, and actually just recently the Prime Minister of Canada spoke about the importance of net neutrality. So I think other countries are unfortunately more going in the right direction, whereas the US right now is going in the wrong direction.
All right, well, thank you so much for your insights. Ryan Clough there from Public Knowledge.